You know what? While I'm here, we're going to roll with it. So one thing that I can't help but notice that's become a thing recently is this weird perception of Vegeta. Namely, this idea that Vegeta is somehow two things simultaneously. Mostly from people who stand the Dragon Ball Super manga, which I'm going to go on the record right now, and I don't care if you like it. It's trash. It's trash. Toritaro, trash writer. Okay, artist, trash writer. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, why is it that y'all seem to want Vegeta to be, again, this kind of ties back to the last video, consistency. Two things at once. I keep hearing how I'm a Vegeta hater, and I hate Vegeta, and how the series hates Vegeta, and you know, it never wants him to succeed, and it never gives him any kind of shine or anything else, right? But then I also get to hear about how, you know, oh, he's easily the most developed character in the series, and easily the most human and multi-layered, and you know, clearly so much care has gone into that character. But then they'll turn around and say, it's just a shame the author hates it. I'm going to give you a little bit of advice, speaking as a writer myself. If there is a character that you hate, you don't use them. You don't write them. You don't give them development. You want them out of your story, out of your work, as much as possible. You will find ways to keep them out. It doesn't matter if your editor turns around and says, oh, we'll bring them back to popular. You're still going to find ways to keep them out of the running as much as possible. Not find ways for them to stay involved, even if they are popular. Because I got to tell you, there are plenty of characters throughout Toriyama's work that have been popular that he decided he didn't like, and so he just kind of kicked to the curb. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. I mean, keep in mind, like, for example, right? For example, oh gosh. You know what? Cell. Toriyama doesn't necessarily have a great attachment to Cell, right? At least from his experience trying to draw him. Okay? He found drawing all the spots consistently was extremely hard work. He found, you know, just overall. And plus, Cell was never originally his plan. It was something that it was essentially something that someone else kind of foisted onto him, and he kind of had to run with. Which, by the way, the fact that arc had as few mistakes as it did, considering all the revisions that man had to do on the fly, is still pretty impressive. But I digress. The point is, when an author doesn't have a super strong attachment to something, you know, he's not going to seek to rush back to use it. And that's probably why, unlike, say, Frieza, you're not going to see Toriyama rushing out to bring back Cell. Even if he is a fan favorite character, he's probably not going to be doing that anytime soon. He may, if they ask him, and the fans keep asking him, may. But it's certainly not something that's going to come to his mind naturally, right? And that's how you know, and that's not even hating a character. That's just not having a strong attachment to a character. If Toriyama genuinely hated Vegeta, right, why would he give him all this care? Unless he's not giving him all this care. And then he is getting shafted. But then how is he getting all this development? How is he getting all this? You see me? You following me? Are you following me? Doesn't make sense, does it? Right. Now, the thing I don't get about this whole scenario, though, is the fact that, again, y'all want him to be two things at once. You either want him to be this uber badass warrior who, you know, is going to take his rightful place, right? And finally surpass that clown Kakarot. And finally be the strongest. And take down the big bad on his own. And finally be, you know, the thing that Vegeta gave up necessarily being obsessed with. And I'm going to get into that later, because I think that there's a lot of things that people do not understand about Vegeta, especially people who claim to be his fans. But as it stands, they want him going back to the days when he was, all proud and arrogant and self-declaratory. I'm going to do this. I am the greatest. I'm going to, I am the Prince of all Saiyans. In fact, these people will actually scream that stuff along with him without a trace of irony. Without a trace of it. Even knowing that it's like every time he starts doing stuff like that, that's when he gets whooped. But they'll do it. Why? It's empowering. It's strong. It's amazing. It shows how great and determined Vegeta is. And they love that. Except they don't. Because then later on, when that does backfire, and Vegeta does find himself laying in a crater again, and he gets up, he's all humble now, right? He's all humble. I got ahead of myself. I never should have, and they find ways to try to justify it. They have their little headcanons that they're rushing toward to try to justify that. But it's such a 180 in characterization. They want this Vegeta who's humble and gladly sits at his teacher's feet, listening and learning. They want this Vegeta who is openly jovial and friendly with the guys around him. He wants this Vegeta who's so eager to see his baby that he just runs up and picks her up and coos about how he's so happy it's a girl. Which is a very far cry from the other Vegeta that you seem to love at the same time. The problem is you almost have Vegeta isolated into a split personality. Two different characters. It's like you want a Banner Hulk situation where there's no Banner Hulk situation. And that's a problem. See, the thing about Vegeta, and I can't believe I actually have to explain this to his fans, his fanboys. You'd think they'd get him the most, but no. Is that Vegeta is essentially, being blunt, a foil to Goku. That is what he is. He is sort of I don't want to say a reflection on the hero, because he's not. Nothing about Vegeta is like, oh, dark mirror of Goku. I've seen some people suggest that. But no. Vegeta is, how do I put this? He's, an object lesson, to be blunt. That's one of his biggest roles in this series. Vegeta is a lesson on hubris, arrogance, jealousy. Vegeta, does go out there half-cocked, and he does go out there all braggadocious and everything, and he does make these epic speeches to the enemy, and, talk about how he's going to bring them to their knees, and, he's going to, ascend to his rightful place in the universe, and everything else, and then he gets his butt whooped. Vegeta comes in like a lot of the quote-unquote anime badass characters, right? The badass rivals. He'll swoop in there looking all cool and everything, except unlike them, where most of the time they do something cool and do take down a villain, Vegeta overstates his importance, overstates his power, overstates, and unless it's an enemy he can straight up, steamroll. A lot of times he'll either get too scared to even fight, which does happen more than once. Or he will simply, get his butt whooped. He'll either back out of the fight, or just give up the fight, or get whooped. It's sort of I'm not going to say deconstruction because, my God, that word is overused. But that's sort of part of what he is. But he's also, he's kind of like a foil to Goku, like I said. Goku wants to become stronger, to push himself to be the best version of himself that he can be. Goku wants to test the absolute limits of himself to become the most complete version of Goku that Goku can be. He's very pure in that motive. That, by the way, is where the pure of heart stuff comes from. It's not that he's, some altruistic superhero or something, or not a selfish bone in his body. No. It's that his intent, what he seeks, what he wants, is pure. There's no ulterior motive. There's no secondary motive. There's no shadowy underbelly of that. There's no, he's not seeking it as a means to an end. That is his end. Vegeta was the opposite. He wants power for power's sake. He wants to be the strongest just because he thinks it's his right. Goku believes in working hard to surpass his limits, and even the supposed elite. Vegeta feels that, his power is his birthright. No one's got the right to take his birthright from him. It was an insult that Goku would even try to surpass him or take that away from him. And even more so when it actually happened. The moment that Vegeta actually saw, not even that Goku was going to beat him, but just that Goku managed to make him bleed, he almost went insane. To the point of being willing to threaten to take out the planet and himself with it. He just could not let that stand that hard. That is how dedicated Vegeta was to that worldview. Right? Goku, he's warm and affectionate with his sons. Vegeta is very cold and uncaring with his own son. Almost, like I said, almost let him die. As a baby, refused to ever hold him. Busted him in the nose. It took a long time for him to change that. But he was willing to let Trunks die in the name of glory chasing. But that's the other thing, because he's all that. And see, that's why I wish Vegeta fans would recognize this. Vegeta was a genocidal maniac. He genuinely enjoyed it. It wasn't a product of nurture. It was a product of nature. That is who he was. And he didn't care to change that. Frieza didn't force him to be this. He wanted to be it. Do you think that he would have stopped being that if he had killed Frieza and taken his throne? Like he wanted to? No. Do you think he wanted to kill Frieza and take his throne because, I'm tired of you mistreating me? No, he was tired of taking orders from him. He was tired of being subordinate to anyone. When his birthright was to be the greatest in the universe. That is why when he freezes up in fear, you have to accept this. Because when you accept that, Vegeta could be a bit of a coward sometimes. Absolutely could. He was all braggadocious when he thought he could win, but once he realized he couldn't, he would either fly into a panic or just give up the will to fight. Or sometimes, if he thought he couldn't win at all, he'd just completely duck out. You need to accept that as part of him. You absolutely need to. And I'm going to tell you why. Because that is what makes the part that you like so compelling. When y'all try to act like this was always there and he just had to struggle to bring it out to the surface, that's not development. That's realization. That's manifesting. That's not him changing. What allowed Vegeta to change, was the effect people had on him. And it was slow. It was over time. Supposedly. Now, I'm going to get into why I think it's still a little bit problematic with him. But just for now, I'm indulging this. Vegeta is also an example that of a character being able to change and take responsibility for their actions and accept the consequences of them. People around him did eventually soften his heart. Bulma, Trunks, the fact that Trunks still looked up to him so much and admired him like he did. Knowing, my dad will never hug me. My dad will never show me affection. My dad will get angry and still bust me in the nose for doing what he dared me to do or to try to do. But he still looked up to and admired his father. And that is sad. But that did finally start to have an effect on him. Bulma finally starting to tolerate him. Learning to overlook the parts of him she couldn't stand, if for no other reason than the sake of their son. But even then, that started to work on him. And as he started softening, she started seeing more and more stuff that she liked in him. Not everything, but she was seeing it. And when he finally, faces Majin Buu, knowing that he is the reason Majin Buu was revived, knowing that it was him, that he had willingly helped this happen, just for the sake of getting stronger and getting his rematch he was so obsessed with that he murdered people. The very cautious, very calculated, very cowardly to a point, Vegeta actually steps forward and willingly enters a fight he knows he won't survive. He knows he will not win it. And does it not to fight for himself, not to fight for his glory, not to fight for his birthright, or to prove his strength, but to protect other people. That you have to accept everything that came before this. You have to, without question, in order for this moment to be as powerful as it is. Okay? You need to understand that. You need to embrace it. He had no illusions of what was going to happen to him at that point. Vegeta knew when he died fighting Buu that he was going to hell. He was going to go to hell. He deserved hell. He was paying for what he had done. No questions about it in his mind. But he still embraced death just for the sake of having a chance to potentially stop that monster from killing his family or anyone else. And when he had an opportunity to make a wish on the Dragon Balls, he made certain to phrase his wish in such a way that not just the people that he needed to come back were back. Not just the people who were killed by Buu came back, but even the people he had murdered were able to come back. I think it's very important that, again, you accept all this before, because this is the guy who murdered an entire village of Namekians for fun, mostly, just to get their Dragon Ball. He had fun while doing it. He didn't care. Now he's over here making these wishes on the Dragon Balls to bring back people that were his victims. Okay? You need to accept point A for point B to be impactful. And this is true of every character development. You need to accept that Krillin used to be an untrusting little butthead, a little deviant snarkster, for you to be able to appreciate the fact that he is such a loyal and trustworthy and caring and unselfish person later in life. You need to accept that Yamcha used to be, this cutthroat bandit, didn't care about anything but his next score, for you to be able to appreciate the fact that he's now a friendly, fun-loving, caring person. Like, even though he's not with Bulma anymore, he still cares about her. They're still friends. He's still there for when, when Vegeta died, he was one of the first people to comfort her. And I mean, this is the guy who, for a while, he was bitter, quote-unquote, stole her from him. And yet he's right there to comfort her while she's mourning his death. You even the characters that people like to overlook their development have frankly great development. It's just overlooked because it's not flashy, but it's there. And part of it's because you don't consider point A when you look at point B. You just start with point B and you don't see anything beyond point B. So it's like, okay, well, they didn't develop. They did. But with Vegeta, you need to understand this. Okay? Now, bear in mind, I still don't think Vegeta's the best handled in this department. I honestly think that the arc Piccolo had, very similar, and actually handled better. It's actually handled better. It flows more naturally. It does, it's not, I'm still going to be this way, but then this one event is suddenly going to make me turn, Piccolo's turn was much more gradual, and I think, spaced out better. But that doesn't mean Vegeta doesn't have it. And Vegeta, by the time, that whole "you're better than me" Kakarot, you're number one, whatever, that wasn't him saying, oh, I'm never going to catch up to him and I'm giving up on that. That was him realizing what it was that made Goku the way he was. Pardon me. That was him accepting, Goku. What makes Goku unique is what allows him to be the warrior that he is. It's certainly better than the approach Vegeta's been taking his whole life. And that's when Vegeta actually realizes, I need to start taking a similar approach. It's not the same. And it's not to say he's copying Goku or he's the exact same as Goku. But he's no longer fighting, to reclaim some birthright or to prove that he's the strongest in the universe, right? He is fighting to better himself, too. To be the best version of Vegeta he can be. With Goku ever being his measuring stick. If he ever surpasses him at some point, sure, fine. So much the better. He also knows that Goku will probably turn around and surpass him again. But that's not the point anymore. It's not to be the top dog. It's I'm going to use you to push me. That is, I think, something that a lot of people miss about his current motivation. And you'll notice, too, Vegeta's always going to be a hard ass. Okay? He's always going to be that. He's always going to be, standoffish. He's always going to be kind of grumpy. He's always going to bristle a bit. He's never going to be this super friendly guy. He's never going to be super warm and openly affectionate. Certainly not around other people. All right? And 18's kind of the same way. Android 18, she, when you look at her, look at how, affectionate she is now. Look how gentle she is with not just her own child, but the other children. When she saw that little baby Pan was sick, she was like super worried. When you see her with Goten and Trunks and she realizes it's them in there, the smile she gets knowing that it's the kids. They're kids being kids, and she finds that endearing to a point. She changes, and you can see that in her. And there are times that, she won't be super warm and affectionate, especially around other people, unless it's people she's very close to. Right? But she will show that now. And she does show that now. And look how much she cares about, her husband and his well-being. She like, her husband and her daughter are like the world to her. And she's insanely protective of both of them. And, look at the fact that when they're alone, he's got her swooning. Even sometimes in public, she'll kind of forget herself. And, she's developed too, but these aspects of her personality, she's still, blunt. She's still sarcastic. She's still kind of bristly when other people are around. She doesn't like people teasing her about, her affection for her family. Same with Vegeta. It's just part of who they are. And if they lost that, they wouldn't be them anymore. So I think it's important to keep in mind that, yes, they're developing, but there are going to be certain traits about these characters, Vegeta especially, that are going to stick around. Okay? I just think it's so funny, right, that I can understand Vegeta as well as I do. And yet I'm the hater. I'm the Vegeta hater. Right? I'm the Vegeta hater. I just don't like him. That's why I fight with the fans of him, because I don't like... No, honestly, it's because I actually understand him. I like him for what he is to the story. He's not my favorite. No. Not even my top 5, being blunt. I'm not even 100% sure where I'd rank him. But I do like him. What it seems to me is that you, the fanboys, who, again, won't accept point A and just want to gravitate to point B. You, the fangirls, who won't accept point A and just want to gravitate to point B. Kind of feels to me like you're the ones who don't like Vegeta for who he actually is. And wish he was someone else that you wish he was. I really have never seen so many people be fans of a character that they clearly don't like. Again, we back. This is just the beginning. Stay tuned.